Welcome back to another episode of Plugged Into Public Health. My name is Lauren Lavin, and I'm going to be the host for today. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Halle, and she's a senior in the Environmental Engineering Department here at the University of Iowa. Halle has a fascinating story to share about her experiences working on clean water initiatives in rural India. From growing up near lakes in Minnesota to working on impactful environmental projects abroad, Halle's journey highlights the critical importance of water access as a public health issue and the power of community-driven solutions in fixing some of those problems. So let's dive into her story and explore how she's making a difference both globally and locally. Let's get plugged into public health. Hi, Halle. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. If you could start by just introducing yourself, what you do here at the University of Iowa, some background for our listeners, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Halle Eisfelder. I am a senior in the Environmental Engineering Department, and I am previously from Lindstrom, Minnesota.
So you ended up from Minnesota to Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
You like Iowa better, or will Minnesota always be home?
I think Minnesota will always be home, but Iowa City, I've grown to love Iowa City. So
That's fair. I also love Iowa City. I'm from South Dakota, so it's kind of the same situation, but I really love Iowa City. I've also seen that the Minnesota State Fair is going on this week.
I just went.
You just went to it?
Yes, I went on Saturday.
I love the Minnesota State Fair. I mean, I love any state fair, but the Minnesota one, those little cookies.
Mm-hmm. They had
That's
like
weird.
fried ranch this year, which was it kind of tasted like cream cheese, but with like ranch in it, I guess. So it's kind of like a more like wonton-esque. It was very good.
They're always coming up with something new to try out. That's funny. Okay, so we can get started on some of the more pertinent questions, I suppose. You've focused some of your studies, classwork, and then outside of class as well on clean water and education in rural India. Could you kind of share what sparked your interest in that topic and how you ended up with that?
So with where I grew up, it's pretty much a small lake town north of the Twin Cities. And so I grew up definitely swimming in lakes and tubing and boating. When I was learning about just like environmental science in general, kind of in the middle school, high school range, and learning that, not everyone in the world has access to not even just clean water for recreational purposes, but also to drink. I think that really sparked it because I grew up very lucky that I could go swimming in a lake. And even in Iowa here, there's some lakes where you definitely don't want to swim in. And so I think I wanted to kind of gear my education based on learning about that, why that is, but then also the innovations in design on how to ensure that, everybody can kind of have the upbringing that I was able to get. And then for India specifically, so I was a junior in high school touring colleges, and it was actually like the week before COVID hit. So I was very lucky. I was able to tour Iowa, but I went to an engineering day tour and my tour guide had just gotten back from the India trip. And so I remember hearing about it. He just seemed like, he was so like amped about it. And I was like, okay, like this is college. These are the experiences that you can get. This is what I want for myself. And so then literally on the way home from Iowa, we got the text saying that COVID is shutting down schools. And so it was put on the back burner. When I ended up deciding to go to Iowa, freshman year, it was still COVID was around. So it wasn't happening. And then sophomore year, I remember emailing Professor Alan Bradley, who is the professor that goes along with this trip. And I remember being like, hey, is this going to happen this year or is it going to be brought back after COVID? He had told me like, hold on till the spring, we'll have meetings. I went to all those and hearing about the trip, what they got to do, I was like, I need to be like, I am going on this. And so then my junior year, I was able to go and.
Yeah. So how long was the actual trip?
I believe it was 3 weeks. It was right after finals ended in December. And then we got back a little after New Year's, maybe like January 10th.
Oh, wow. So you were gone for Christmas.
So we got to do Christmas and New Year's in India.
Was that fun?
It was so fun.
Oh my gosh. What an experience.
All the hotels had like their own version of a Christmas tree. And then Yeah. And then
Oh,
for New
fun.
Year's, we like got to see fireworks and it was really cool.
How did your experiences living in India for those 3 weeks shape your understanding of water scarcity issues faced by rural communities?
Yeah, I think a lot of us going into this experience were engineering students. And so we all had a pretty good idea of the science and the technology behind what we were going to be seeing, but then actually seeing the day to day lives of people in India and how they go about their lives. We were able to see that firsthand. And so getting to see the infrastructure that they had in place in India as well helped us understand, not only, okay, they don't have clean water, but why don't they have clean water and kind of what other issues are based around there. And then what are the results of not having that clean water.
Mm.
A big part too, we were able to stay in very nice hotels. And even there, we were able to drink the water, even running your toothbrush underwater. That was a very
Wow.
big no-no. Like, me and my roommate had to boil our toothbrushes so many times just because we were so used to just turning on the faucet and putting water. I think getting to see where we were in a nice hotel even amplified that. Now going to rural villages where they don't have running water, period, we really got to see the severity of the issues firsthand.
What does the, for lack of a better word, water situation in India look like where you were at? If they don't have running water, where are they getting their water from?
Yeah, so a lot of them are getting their water from wells. I know we worked with the SM Sehgal Foundation and they work to help lower salinity in residential wells. So then their water was safe to drink, or at least how they did it was installing check dams. And so the check dams basically gave the water on land a higher retention time to be able to go into the groundwater to then dilute the salinity that was present there to a level that was safe enough for them to drink. And also, I know they have water tanker trucks. So when we were driving by, you're seeing those trucks, they don't have a pipe infrastructure like we would see
Right.
here.
No, yeah, absolutely. And then, so you said you couldn't use like the water even in the hotel room and you guys were staying at a nice hotel. Is that something that's like unique to people visiting there, or would even people native to India also not be able to like use that water?
That was always like a question that we had. I will say I'm still not fully confident, but I know bottled water. Everywhere you look on the side, everybody is either selling or buying bottled water and drinking
Mhm.
bottled water. And so one thing for us was you went to like a Starbucks, you couldn't get an ice drink because the ice is made of water that is going to cause you
Oh my
some
gosh. I
issues.
wouldn't have even thought of that.
In cases like that, everybody that I was observing, they were still able to drink that. But I know bottled water was a very, very, that's all that I was drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even with that, you had to drink like a specific brand of bottled water because before they were having issues that manufacturers were just filling the bottled water with tap water and then resealing the bottles.
Oh my gosh.
And so we got very lucky. We had very awesome tour guides who know exactly what we needed. So we
That's
were good.
great.
But
It's definitely something we take for granted, or like that even we can drink the tap water. Like I
mhm,
almost exclusively drink the water out of my sink at
me
home.
too.
And it tastes like gray water to me. I don't know, maybe if we were to do some science on it, it wouldn't be as great, but I think that's definitely something we take for granted, that we can just turn on a faucet and
hmm
drink as much water as we want.
hmm
Can you describe the main goals of your clean water initiative in India and like any challenges you face while you were trying to work on that project or implement it?
Yeah, the main goal of kind of like the University of Iowa going, we were partnering with the SM Sehgal Foundation. And so a group of about 10 of us from the University of Iowa went, but then also 10 from Purdue went as well. So 20 of us went and we got to go to the Sehgal Foundation and we learned about what they were doing because all the research we did was in partner with them. And then at the end of the experience, we presented our findings to them. For the Sehgal Foundation, their kind of like main is they are empowering rural India. And so, like I mentioned before, they work to install check dams in areas where, like, it's the mountains or like a hill pass where the rain would collect on the side and then be able to go down into a localized area. They would put that check dam there. So then that water would then go into the groundwater. And
Okay.
then they also install rainwater collection systems on the rooftop of schools. It's kind of reminded me of like a gutter system like we would
Yeah.
have. And then all of those pipes go into a tank where it allows there to be like a freshwater pocket underground. And then they're able to pump that water out. They're able to bring fresh water to a lot of the schools. Before the rainwater collection systems, girls weren't able to go to school because there was no restroom facilities for them. And so with the installation of these rainwater systems, they're helping girls be able to go to school. And
Wow.
yeah, it was so cool. And we got to go to a few different schools and we got to go into the principal's office kind of deal. And they have the top 5 students listed on the wall, and all 5 of them are girls. So, so cool to see that now that they're able to get education, they're all being very, very successful. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was it's such a cool experience. With what we were doing as University of Iowa students is we went to a few different rural communities. The first one, we did a salinity water sweep. They have numerous groundwater wells around the district. We paired off into, because there were about 20 of us, so it was like groups of 3 or 4 that went out and just tried to get a salinity reading at all the wells so they could see how the check dams were performing. And then with that, we did pH strips. And then on those strips, I also did nitrate, chloride, and fluoride to gain some more parameters. So that was a big thing that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one challenge I had with that was I can say, like, I don't speak Hindi. There was definitely like a very harsh language barrier with all of our groups. Everyone was either paired with somebody who was with the Sehgal Foundation. Professor Bradley has been taking Hindi lessons, so he could get us around. And then the Purdue Professor Venkatesh Mirwadi, he also spoke Hindi. And then one student who went it. Our groups were formed around who could
Yeah.
communicate.
Who could
And
translate?
yes. And I remember I was with Professor Bradley and a few others, and we were trying to find this well, and most of our coordinates were like a rough estimate. And so we're kind of driving around this district and we think we found it. In rural India where we were, it was just like miles and miles of mustard fields. And so we find this road in between a mustard field. We're like, okay, it must be here. And so we get out of the car, we're walking around the mustard field, and like all 4 of us split up. We are going far into the mustard. Can't find it, can't find it. Well, we hear like a clicking sound, and we're like, what the heck is this sound? And so eventually we're all like, okay, this is a pump. So we know there's water somewhere. It's just, it's too, like, we can't walk to where it is. They pile back into the car. We're going down the road. We see the pump, but we like don't know if it's the exact spot we're looking for. And so we're driving, but then we stopped and we're trying to figure it out. But a woman was walking on the road towards us, and she was trying to get us, she was asking us if we were looking for the water, because they've done this so many years that when the group of 10 people come from the state,
Oh.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
they know we're here for water and like looking for the water sources, I guess. And so
Yeah.
he had recognized what we were trying to do there. But she and I were unable to directly communicate what we were trying to say to each other. I remember she kept doing a hand motion where kind of like if you're going to wash your face with one hand to like scoop up to water.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, like we're trying to find the water. And
Mm-hmm.
so once we kind of realized we were on the same page, she led us to the pump. She disconnected it so we could fill up our sample bottles and get all the measurements that we needed. So that was a really cool
Wow.
moment that just for her cupping her hand and putting it to her face, we were able to find where we needed to go, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I love that they're so welcoming to you guys, like
Mhm.
willing to help, probably because they know that in turn you help them. So,
So welcoming though. They were, a lot of people were always offering chai or to come in and talk. And so it was very, very cool.
kind of community areas were you around in? Were you by a major city or were you in the rural area the whole time?
So for the place I just described, we were probably like 2 or 3 hours away from New Delhi, but it was
Okay.
definitely like a rural area. And I know they had made a mention that it was one of the most rural spots, but it was also so close to the major city that that also was like a big disconnect, I guess. But for the most part, yeah, all the research we did was in the rural villages, and then we either because we stayed in New Delhi and then Jaipur, which is where like the Taj Mahal is, and then Alwar. So we kind of did like a triangle in
Yeah.
run.
Hit a few different places over the
Mhm.
course of the trip. You kind of talked about how the community interacts with you guys. Did you directly involve the community in any of these projects, or was it just something that you guys as students put on?
Yes, the Sehgal Foundation has worked a lot with those communities. So we were specifically especially for the salinity sleep, they had installed check dams. And so that was something the community was involved in. And for the rainwater harvesting systems, the community has to be involved in that aspect because some maintenance is required before monsoon season. They have to sweep the roof, and then there's monkey feces on the roof. And so
Oh,
they work to ensure that the roof is as clean as possible before it then goes into the fresh water pocket.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So definitely community is at the forefront of this project. And I know the Sehgal Foundation also has a public radio system that they put on so that any information that needs to get out to the entire community, they're able to get it out through this public radio system. And it was really cool because a few of the students on our trip were able to be interviewed for it. So some of the segments that they do on the radio are like informational, kind of like more fun segments too.
Yeah. That's great. Have you been able to transpose any of the lessons that you learned from your work in India to maybe here in the US or other regions facing water scarcity?
Yeah, I think a really big takeaway for me in that case was that when the community is involved and it's something you like for the community, then success will occur.
Mhm.
If it's a one man show, it's really going to be hard to pull off. But since for all these projects, it was so community focused, it was really cool to see how successful those projects came and how now they're able to expand on those projects to be even more successful for that community. A big part for me was that, in engineering coursework, we're doing a lot of design, a lot of the check dams and the rainwater systems. They're pretty simple designs and concepts that us as non-graduated engineer students are able to follow pretty well. It was like relatively simple designs were able to be so instrumental for these communities. And I think that was something that I'll definitely remember into my design work, but also in my future career.
Sometimes we try to reinvent the wheel when that
Mhm.
does not need to be the.
No.
So what are some of your hopes for the future of clean water initiatives globally, and how do you plan to continue this work in your field when you graduate?
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely very excited to be a new generation of environmental engineering students and even just in the environmental sector to begin with. And
Yeah.
I think in my career, being able to design new technology, even if it's a relatively simple design, knowing that if it's designed sustainably and in a way that a lot of people can come together to ensure it works, then that will really help ensure the longevity of that design, but also that it impacts people in the best way possible. I guess too, like with my generation, I'm hoping more awareness is spread about these issues. You don't necessarily need to go to India
Yeah.
to understand that these issues are real and they are impacting people around the world. I know I'm hoping to spread awareness not only on my trip, but also, especially as a woman in engineering, getting to see how the young women in India entering school and kind of being an advocate for like women in STEM and just helping spread awareness so that these issues are a focus of what this new generation of environmental engineers is hopefully tackling.
You bring up some really great points about how a lot of times it's just that we need to be able to hear about it. So that's why I love like the format of this podcast or
Mhm.
other relatively informal means of media that no, I don't have to go on a trip to India to learn about this, but I can learn about it through you who has done it. I think that's really important and a really great way for our generation to both spread and consume that information. And then also to hear how something, again, as simple as clean water changes the girls that can go to school. And that would not have been something that before today I would have even considered. But
Mhm.
it shows how important we know how important water is, but we maybe don't know the trickle down effects of having something like that in villages halfway across the world. So
For sure.
having these conversations is pretty important.
And we're in a good time for it too. We have a lot of access to be able
That's
to
right.
learn about this.
You are totally correct. Do you have any like key takeaways from your time in India, both personally and professionally? You kind of touched on some, but if you have any others.
I think a big one is to just be open-minded about whatever experience you are currently doing. Before going to India, you kind of know like some base information, but if you set, in my experience, seeing if you set expectations too high for something, then you might not be able to get as much out of it. And if in return you're able to just kind of take it as it is, be open minded, I feel like I got a lot more out of it that way than if I came in and was like, okay, I need X, Y, and Z. I need to understand this. Or I just feel like being open minded was definitely, especially traveling globally, kind of my big takeaway for it. And also, kind of like I had said, that relatively simple, but also very creative solutions can save lives. I think that's definitely moving into my future in like consulting and design, something that I'm going to keep with me.
So that's great. Do you have any advice for students or young professionals interested in international development and environmental sustainability?
If you have the opportunity at all, definitely push for yourself to be able to have those experiences. I know there's a lot of reasons why people aren't able to study abroad, but I think if you're able, push for yourself, push for scholarships, push for any way that you can go to make it work. I think it'll definitely be worth your while and something you won't regret. And like I said, be open minded. A large part of living anywhere else in the world, but also even living somewhere new in the United States, you gain so many different experiences and new insights that you may not have if you just have lived in the same place. And then even getting
Yeah.
to talk to other people and you get those experiences that I think have really helped formulate like how my thought processes have changed since being in India. And I've lived in a few other states, getting to see kind of a wide variety of areas really helps be like more well-rounded. And I
Yeah.
would say any opportunity you have to become more well-rounded, I would fight for those opportunities for yourself.
That's the perfect way to end the podcast with that great advice. Thank you so much, Hallie, for coming on to talk with us today about clean water in India and your experiences as a student and what you'll be doing with that going forward. That's a wrap for today's episode. A big thank you to Hallie for sharing her experiences and insights into the world of clean water initiatives and environmental engineering. Her work in India and her passion for sustainable solutions offered me a fresh perspective on how simple innovations can truly transform communities. And I think that's a lesson that we're all better off remembering. We hope Hallie's journey inspires you to think about how we can all contribute to global sustainability efforts going forward. See you next week for a new episode. This episode was hosted and written by Lauren Lavin and edited and produced by Lauren Lavin. You can learn more about the University of Iowa College of Public Health on Facebook. Our podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help support the podcast, please share it with your colleagues, friends, or anyone interested in public health, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Have a suggestion for our team? You can reach us at cph-gradambassador@uiowa.edu. This episode is brought to you by the University of Iowa College of Public Health. Thanks for getting plugged into public health.